Yo, what is up, y'all? My name is Rob Donaldson, and welcome back to the last college football pick'em video of the regular season, I might add, that little caveat there. But certainly, this is going to be the last major slate, or I guess last two major slates of the season. Man, my heart kind of tears apart just saying that out loud, because there are some teams that I've fallen in love with that aren't going to be doing anything in terms of bowls or being involved in the college football playoff. And this time of year as well, we're going to see a lot of opt-outs and a lot of early draft declarees that kind of ruin the makeup of some of these teams and some of these rosters. But this year, I will say, even with that aside, there is so much to look forward to. You got conference championship week. You've got a meaningful Army-Navy game before the bowl season kicks off. And then obviously the college football playoff, which is just going to be so much fun, especially when we have a solidified bracket. And we will have futures for the college football playoff as well that we're going to be betting on. But before we jump into the picks of this, and we're going to be betting on Friday and Saturday in this video, I'm going to have picks for both slates just because both are kind of equally loaded on Black Friday and on Saturday. But before we jump into those picks, I do want to shout out today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. I say it every single time, but this is a great platform because it gives you a couple different angles that you can take a look at for things like college football or college basketball, NBA, NFL, NHL. There's just a number of different leagues at your disposal, and if you're not tapped into this market or if you haven't really tried out this market in the past, I highly recommend you do so. And on top of that, you get a promo code, ROBDFB at sign up, and they'll get you a pretty sweet deposit match bonus there as well. But with all that being said, y'all, I'm ready to hop into these picks. All right, first up, we are here on Friday in the noon Eastern time window, and we are taking a look at a matchup between Minnesota and Wisconsin. And I get it, Wisconsin has not had a season to remember, and on top of that, they're battling for bowl eligibility in this spot. So maybe they come out and they're desperate and they look like the better team. That's certainly possible, especially at home in Camp Randall. But at the same time, I think Wisconsin is just on another level of bad this year. It's really a shame what this program has turned into in such a quick time. But for that reason, I am going to be taking Minnesota here on the road, on the money line, for 2 units for our first bet here on Friday. For pick number 2, we are taking a look at a matchup between Oregon State and Boise State. And obviously, Boise State is the team that everybody is talking about, whether it's Ashton Jeanty going up for the Heisman, or whether it's just Boise State in general, being the 11th ranked team in the college football playoff, and potentially, being higher seeded than the Big 12 champion who comes out of that conference. And that's really interesting because Boise State over the last 3 weeks, listen, we've bet against them 3 straight times, and actually, 2 of the last 3, we split the pair, but it felt like every single time out over the last 3 weeks, that Boise State actually didn't really look that impressive. I know, it's crazy to say. They're continuing to win games, but I haven't really been impressed. And for that reason, laying a number like 19, I don't feel is warranted, even with as bad as Oregon State is. So let's go ahead and take those points here with the Beavers for 2 units here on Friday. For pick number 3, we are taking a look at a matchup between Ole Miss and Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl. And it's a bummer that this game isn't on Thanksgiving this year. Usually it is, but it is what it is. I'm not going to complain about it, and it's really not going to be the spectacle that it can be, I think, in some years. And Ole Miss, obviously coming into this game off of the loss to Florida, we were on Florida first half money line in that game. We were on Florida full game spread. We made a fair bit of money on those Gators, but when you're looking at Ole Miss in this spot, this is definitely one of those we are going to unload the clip even when you're dead type of ball games, and laying 25.5 points, I don't think we even sweat it here with Ole Miss. So let's go ahead and lay that 25.5 for 3 units for our third bet here on Friday. All right, next up, we are heading out to the night slate, and we've got a fun rivalry here between Georgia Tech and Georgia, but again, we are seeing a hefty spread being laid at 19.5 points, and there's a reason for that. Georgia with 2 losses isn't in the mood to be effing around with anybody right now. And when you look at Georgia Tech on the other side, Haynes King has been dealing with a shoulder issue for the past, 4 or 5 weeks. He's missed some time this year already, and he really cannot throw the ball down the field. That's an issue because you're one-dimensional against Georgia. Georgia, even with some of their struggles this year, is gonna kill you, and that's why this line is 19.5, and that's why I think this line is justified at being at that number. And for that reason, I say we go ahead and lay the 19 points here for 3 units for our 4th bet here on Friday. All right, next up, we are heading over to the Saturday slate, and we are starting it off with a bang, and we are going to be betting on the game. And the game is obviously Michigan and Ohio State. That's what it's billed as, so I'm not going to call it anything else. It's a rivalry that's been going for over 100 years at this point, and man, it's always a fun way to end the college football regular season, but Michigan is very much down this season, which is a little bit of a bummer. At the same time, Ohio State, I think this is going to be one of those spots where they just kind of show who they really are and how good they really are, and we saw it last week against Indiana. After that first drive, Ohio State's defense shut them down and pitched a shutout from there on out, and I think that's going to be a lot of kind of what we see here as well. So let's go ahead and lay the 20.5 points here with the Buckeyes for 2 units for our first bet here on Saturday. All right, for pick number 2 here on Saturday, we are taking a look at another fun rivalry game. I love all these rivalries that come in on the back end of the year, and the fact that so many of them are meaning so much in terms of the college football playoff and who goes dancing, who doesn't. It's awesome, and this game is a testament to that with South Carolina and Clemson. South Carolina looked dead in the water for a college football playoff. I don't think their fan base even believed that they were even going to be in the mix, let alone sitting with essentially a play-in game in this spot if they're somehow able to beat Clemson. But here we are, and Clemson is at home in this one. They're in Death Valley, South Carolina, baby, as Dabo Swinney once said, and for that reason, I feel like there's an extra aura around this place. I don't want to sound like too young and date myself, but it does feel like there's something next level about going into Clemson, especially with so much on the line. And with Dabo Swinney, you've got a great coach on that side. If South Carolina comes in here and wins this game, my hats are off to them. But I'm going to go ahead and lay the 2.5 points here for 3 units for our second bet here on Saturday. For our third pick here on Saturday, we're going off the radar a little bit, and we've got another fun rivalry game. This is an in-state rivalry between Louisiana and UL Monroe, and UL Monroe is at home in this spot. It's in Monroe, Louisiana, and they have a chance to reach bowl eligibility under Brian Vincent, year 1 for Brian Vincent, that is, coming over from UAB, and this is one of the better feel-good stories that unfortunately has kind of gone off the tracks, so to speak, because UL Monroe was rolling for a good bit with only an early loss to Texas, but in recent weeks, they have just been going through murders a row and getting murdered every time out. At the same time, there's a lot to play for in this spot. They're at home. It's a rivalry game. They're getting 9.5 points, and I get it. Louisiana is the better team, but this feels like a lot for a team that's going to be definitely playing up in this spot. So let's go ahead and take those 9.5 points here for 2 units for our third bet here on Saturday. All right, next up, we are heading out to Los Angeles, where we have the Trojan men taking on Notre Dame, and this is obviously, again, a really fun rivalry matchup, and what's really interesting about this spot is I was looking back at the past 4 years, and I was surprised by how many games disproportionately so were being played in South Bend, Indiana, and not in Los Angeles. And when you have this matchup here in Los Angeles, I do feel like that time zone difference does make a huge difference in terms of how players perform. And obviously Notre Dame is coming off that unique win over Army last week in the Bronx and Yankee Stadium. But I feel like the Trojan men here are going to be able to put on a performance and at least keep it within this number of 7.5. So let's go ahead and take those points here for 2 units for our fourth bet here on Saturday. All right, next up, we are staying in that 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time window, and we are heading out to Tucson, Arizona, where we have the Wildcats taking on the Sun Devils, and obviously, again, a great in-state rivalry matchup, and Arizona has nothing to play for. You know, they've won 4 games this season. They're not going to be bowl eligible. They fell short of a lot of expectations that a lot of people levied their direction, but at the same time, when you can play spoiler, and in this case, major spoiler, because Arizona State on the other side has a shot at the college football playoff. They have a shot at the Big 12 championship, and Arizona has all the potential to just say, hey, we do not care. You're going to lose this game, and you're going to feel miserable. And heck, I feel like they're going to have a really good shot to do it. So let's go ahead and take the 9.5 points here for 4 units. And for an additional unit, let's go ahead and take a stab at that first half money line here as well. All right, next up, we are staying in the same time window, and we are heading out to a different conference. This time, Auburn versus Alabama in the Iron Bowl. And this has produced some really fantastic games over the past decade plus. But when you're looking at this matchup here, Auburn is awful. I don't know how exactly they beat Texas A&M last week. I can kind of see the angle. I mean, Auburn is one of those teams that just has the ability to play up in weird spots. But at the same time, even with them fighting for bowl eligibility, they are not catching Alabama by surprise, especially with Alabama having just dropped a game at Oklahoma. I think Alabama could potentially win this game 56-7. So let's go ahead and lay the 11.5 points here with the Crimson Tide for 4 units here on Saturday. All right, next up, we are staying in that same time window. And once again, we have a big bet to place here. Apologies, I hate jamming so many bets into one little time window, but when they're great bets, you gotta bet them. And in this case, it's the same thing here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this Rutgers and Michigan State matchup. And when you're looking at Michigan State, obviously 5-6, they're battling for bowl eligibility in this spot. It's the first year under Jonathan Smith. If you want to make an impression, you gotta have that upwards trajectory in your first year, and kind of like what we were doing last week when we bet on Michigan against Northwestern, I feel like Michigan State could potentially pour it on against the Rutgers here. So let's go ahead and take them on the money line for 4 units here on Saturday. Next up, we are jumping out to that 7 p.m. Eastern Time window, and we've got a matchup in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with the Oklahoma Sooners traveling to LSU, and LSU has been one of those teams that has been fading away from the public perception because of recent losses and just general underperformance under Brian Kelly. And Oklahoma is ascending upwards at a rapid rate. Obviously, they just beat Alabama, and they pretty much pitched a shutout. They won 24-3. Alabama never really looked like they were getting close to score in that game either. And when you're looking at this game against Oklahoma, I get it. You know, Oklahoma showed some things last time out, but LSU has some firepower. Baton Rouge at night is a different beast. And after a big win like that, there's no chance that I'm betting your side, especially when you're getting this many points. Suspicious. Just very suspicious. And for those reasons, I am 100% laying the 6 points here with LSU for 4 units here on Saturday. All right, for our final bet of the college football regular season, heartbreak, but we are taking a look at Texas, taking on Texas A&M. I am so glad that this rivalry in particular is back in our lives. Obviously, this wasn't really being played because of the Big 12 SEC difference in conference, but when you're looking at this game, I feel like we're going to get some memorable moments over the next 10 years plus, and Texas A&M, great matchup stylistically here. Texas really hasn't faced a quarterback of Marcel Reed's caliber already this season. And on the other side, when you're looking at Texas's offense in particular, we don't necessarily know who's going to be starting this game at this point. Whether it's Arch, whether it's Kid Ewers, I feel like the handicap is still the exact same, but a lot of things are stacking up against Texas here. And Texas really also, you look at their resume, you want to talk about resumes, that's one of the least impressive resumes in the sport right now, and they're the number 3 team in the country. Texas A&M is coming off an emotional loss in triple overtime. I want to back the Aggies here, and I want to back them big. So let's go ahead and take the 6 points here with Texas A&M for 4 units, and let's also throw an additional unit on that first half money line here as well. All that being said, y'all, I really do want to just take a second to just tell you how much I appreciate you guys, because you have made this college football season for me just so damn fun. I didn't know what this channel would, do in terms of viewership or people, reaching out via Twitter DMs or in the comments or just showing love on the like bar or in the subscription section. Man, it's been mind-blowing. It's been, a rush of excitement for me in this, and for that reason, I just want to give, my thanks. Obviously, I'm recording this, and it's the eve of Thanksgiving, so it's only fitting that I thank you guys. And with all that being said, we're going to have a number of different videos on the horizon, but let's go ahead and finish out the regular season in college football strong. And as always, y'all, I will see you in a future video. Take it easy.